Well, thanks so much for coming, both of you.
Thank you for having us.
We could start with how you guys both started dancing, or skating, I should say. You both started skating at a very young age.
That's right.
What kind of drew you to skating? What did you love about it, and how did that evolve?
Great. Well, like you, since we've had a chance to chat a little bit, I grew up on a lake locally in Michigan, and that freezes over in the winter. So my family, and a lot of our fellow neighbors would skate on the rink or on the lake in the winter, and I just fell in love with it. As some of you probably, I would imagine, took skating classes growing up. It's not super uncommon in this area. So we both took skating lessons growing up. I was an insanely energetic child, and so I think my parents were really glad for me to have an outlet to go and just make all that happen. But I fell in love with skating immediately as soon as I tried it, and just kind of never looked back.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having us. Yeah. So I think the first thing was Mighty Ducks came out, and that's not like a plug, it's just a movie. And so I wanted to learn how to play hockey, and also both my parents skated a little bit and had a lot of fun with their friends, and just wanted me to be able to manage, so I didn't just have to hang onto the boards if my friends ever went skating. I never went skating with my friends. By the way, they didn't want to skate with me. Sorry, I mean, except for my best friend. They're just different categories. So I started, and I fell in love with it. I think it's such a different feeling gliding across the ice, and I really like going fast and the athleticism. And I did play hockey until I was 18, along with skating with Meryl, and so I spent a lot of time in an ice rink, and I just always loved it.
Excellent. And so both of you started skating young, and we fast forward, you started skating, but the partnership took some time. So I heard there's a story, it took 4 years for the two of you to start talking to each other while skating. So.
Right. I need to explain that. So Charlie and I started skating together when I was 9. Charlie was 8. So it's been a long time. I was incredibly shy. Charlie hasn't changed much. So he has changed a lot. No, he was always joking around, and so I think the talking and the lack of talking was probably more on my end, but. Ice dance is, it's something that we didn't really understand when we first started, that's for sure. We were figure skaters, and Charlie's coach at the time wanted to find Charlie a little ice dance partner that was, he was 8, so he needed to find just a young lady who was a good physical match for him, and in terms of skating and stuff like that. And so when we started, we didn't really have an idea of what ice dance was, or, we were to go skate with this little boy, And so I didn't know when Charlie was going to throw me, or all the other things that happen in pair skating, which is a different sort of sub-discipline of figure skating. But we really enjoyed it right away. We had a surprising amount of success not really knowing what ice dance was early on, which we also really enjoyed. We were like, oh, this is fun.
Don't sugarcoat it, Meryl. We like winning.
Yeah, we like right. But yeah, so we honestly, we just really liked what was happening, and we kind of stuck with it for over 20 years. Do you have anything to add to that?
I think I added enough.
Okay.
Was there a point in which you thought, we are really good, we are going to be competitive, we can be Olympians in this?
First of all, I was just we've told this story so many times, and it's true, we didn't know what we were getting into, and I just think how absurd it is, people that get into skiing, it's you learn how to ski and then you just go down a mountain. It's there's no, ice dance is kind of confusing, I don't know, and so it might sound weird that we got into doing something when we were 8. We were just, our parents didn't know what it was. We didn't really know. We're just dancing in a dance hold with someone that's we're very young and immature, and so a lot of our success was sort of just like being in the right place at the right time, finding a partner that we could, obviously the physical qualities necessary, the height difference, the size, being at the same rink, having parents who teach sort of a similar philosophy on how to get along with other people. All of these things just fell into place. We didn't have to work for that. But we did have to work really hard for everything else. And so, we little by little worked our way up through the ranks, starting at 8, and really like our first year we went to the national championships, and again, we were like, what is happening? And then we got second, and then the next year we moved up a level and we won. And then we started to run into some difficulties because we were 11 and we were competing against like 16 and 17-year-olds in a sport that like requires artistry and like romance and relationship, and we're just like, technically we were very good skaters. We worked really hard. We liked working hard. Practice was fun for us, but that was sort of the first real challenge. Was just like, it was disheartening because the judges were like, you don't belong on the ice with this like high school senior, and but we enjoyed it enough that we pushed through. And so by the time we were 16, 17 ourselves, also I should mention that at our rink we had the coach that sort of started all of the U.S. ice dance success. We hadn't had much success in the sport of ice dancing. I know you guys are all nodding along, you already know this, but in the early 90s. And he was a Russian coach. He came to the Detroit Skating Club and started his program and started building it. We didn't have him as our coach, but all of the best American ice dancers were like on the ice with us, so we were just watching them every day. And so that was hugely inspirational, and also showed us that like they're working hard, but they're not doing anything totally insane off the wall. They're just working hard, and they did it consistently, and they had high expectations, but they were able to reach them through effort and through perseverance. And I think that was really important to us. And then they started going to the Olympics. And we were like at the rink with them, and we knew they were going to the Olympics, and we knew them, and they would talk to us sometimes, and it would like blow our minds. But it really made it real for us. And by the time we were 18, we did end up working with this coach, Igor Spielbon, and another coach, Marina Zueva. And by then, it was like we were friends with the people that were going to the Olympics. And getting close to like being able to compete against them. And we thought, we just need to keep doing what we're doing, essentially. We didn't have to do anything too crazy, and it was just a step-by-step process. But the reason why it was a step-by-step process for us is just a lot of the things that sort of lined up. Being in the hotbed for U.S. ice dancing, we just were really lucky to have that, and to have the support of our parents and each other. And I think all of those things made the Olympics really tangible, and it would be a wildly different experience if you had any other ice dance team up here talking about like their route.
Yeah. And during that early time, was there like a driving force? Was it like, okay, we're competing against high schoolers, that was really hard.
Yeah.
Meryl, were you like, we need to go practice tomorrow? Or is there like your parents like, we'll set up ice time? Or
Sure. Great question. One of the things we've sort of mentioned is how fortunate we got and how lucky we were. I mean, Charlie and I grew up 8 minutes down the road from our parents still live 8 minutes away from each other, which is insane, because most of the people we were competing against either had to move away from their families in Arizona when they were 13 and live in someone else's house and grow up. Like, these people were going through real hardships to make their ice dancing or like figure skating dreams a reality. We graduated with our high school classes. We had the world's best ice dance coaches in our backyard. And our parents were always there with us, which wasn't the case for a lot of our competitors and people we were training with. And so it's hard when you're 8 and 9 to like have the habits and have sort of like the discipline that you need to be an Olympic athlete, right? And so the fact that Charlie and I had these not just amazing parents on both sides, but parents who really had very similar perspectives on how they wanted to raise their kids, right? Like Charlie's parents and my parents said, no, you're going to prioritize school through high school. After that, it's your call, but you're not, we're not withdrawing you from school. You're not kind of going halftime. And just sort of that perspective of like both sets of parents having a similar philosophy on not just like raising athletes, but raising people was incredibly helpful for us. And then in addition to that, I think in large part because of what I was saying with our parents, but Charlie and I also sort of just developed a mutual understanding of what we wanted. And it wasn't always to win the Olympics. It wasn't always like the medals and the accolades, which were always fun. But we just really enjoyed getting better all the time. And whether it was like a huge stride and a huge step forward or a really small step forward, I think actually both individually, we really just got excited about coming into the rink and being able to do something that we couldn't do the day before or the week before. And I think we've had so many different things contribute to our success over the years, but as Charlie alluded to, we loved practicing and just that feeling of getting better and improving bit by bit. And so I think that's probably one of the things that contributed most to our success. And like you said, did you ever say like, well, we're competing against high schoolers, what's next? And I think as Charlie said, it wasn't really until the 2006 Olympics, watching our friends on TV, people we were training with every day, competing at the games, we're like, oh my goodness, this could be us in 4 years. And I think for me, that was the first time it really dawned on me, at least, that that was a real possibility. And just sort of the beauty of taking it one step at a time is something that I think served us very well.
Yeah. So I'm curious, you had that moment, you think like, this could be us. Did anything change, or like what's the process, either physical or mental, in order to be the best in the world at a very difficult activity, sport?
Yeah. We're just not going to tell you the secret. it's going to cost you. No, I think the secret is that there's no secret, and everyone basically knows that. And it's both cool and kind of sucky at the same time. It might make me feel better if there was some secret that we had, but there isn't. And I think so. Through high school, we went full time, and I played hockey, and we did a lot of other extracurriculars, and we were successful ice dancers. But it was just a part of what we did. And so then when we graduated, we deferred a year from University of Michigan and just dedicated ourselves to ice dancing. And it was really good for our skating, but it was a really challenging year personally. I think both of us realized how much we needed to be something besides just machines working on ice dancing move technique, to stay sane, kind of. And so we had to learn. The whole process was really how we learned about ourselves and how we learned how to deal with difficult situations. And we were talking about goal setting and earlier before this, and you can't skip steps. And we didn't try to, but we went at everything in the right order. And again, it was the people that were around us that were helping us, and there's a lesson in that. I try not to look at the camera, but for a fact, I've always had a little Ferris Bueller in me, you know. And we had a passion for the sport. I don't know what that means still. I don't know why necessarily, other than it was kind of fun, and we enjoyed, like Meryl said, getting better, but the idea of passion is still, it's kind of slippery. Because I explain this to kids who are like talking, they want to know what they need to do to win the Olympics. And I'm like, well, are you passionate about the sport? And they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, me neither. What does it mean even? Like, do you like doing it? And they're like, sometimes. And I'm like, yeah, keep doing it then. It's not helpful. And so basically, I want to answer your question, but I also want to say, like, what's interesting for us is that we don't have all the answers, even though we've experienced it in real time and have now had even more time to try to gain perspective on, like, what it means. And so anyway, yeah, so back to reality. We graduated high school and dedicated ourselves to the sport of ice dancing. I stopped playing hockey, we stopped doing everything else, and it was challenging, but we made significant strides. And our first year in the senior levels, we got 7th place at the World Championships, which was kind of a big deal. Up until then, American teams had really only ever gotten like 13th, 14th, or lower their first year at the World Championships, and you had to just kind of like work your way up slowly. And our first year, we were already, it felt like there was a pressure, like we were destined to have some more success, and that there was some sort of belief in our level or talent or whatever it was that we were bringing to the ice that I think it gave us confidence when we really needed it, because we were competing against people that we had seen win Olympic medals. My wife included, which is a complicated and different story. But we needed the confidence of having that, but it was also suddenly a tremendous amount of pressure, and we went to these competitions with like full-grown adults, and it's their job. And we're like coming off of high school, and it's like, we have fun doing ice dancing, and it's like how they make money, it's how they make their living, they have families, and we're out on the ice with them, and you can see it in their eyes what it means to them. It's not just a game, it's their whole life. And so we had to deal with that. Is that what we wanted? Is that how we wanted to progress? And in some ways, yes, in some ways, no, but everyone sort of does it a little differently, but it was hugely influential in how we continue to approach it. And I think that we're good-humored people, and so we were able to laugh at ourselves, and you know, even at training, at figure skating, but how serious we were about what we were doing increased, and so the time we spent at the rink was more serious. And then how we thought about skating outside of the rink, what we were eating, how we were sleeping, everything. You know, once you are 22, 23, your body's like, okay, take it easy, man. And so you have to be smart. And we had to work harder than everyone else, and we had to be smarter than everyone else. And we'll get to this or not, whatever. We weren't the most talented. Like, you know, there's a lot of really talented people in the world, and that was something that we realized too, is like, there are people that we're training with every day that are like more talented than we are. So and we can make the Olympics, but like, maybe we want to win. How's that going to happen with these people around us? So, I don't know, I did, I guess.
I think one of you mentioned like the machine of preparing for Olympics. Like, how much during that time did you feel like a machine? You go to the ice this time, you eat this meal for lunch, then you sleep for this many hours. If you get 15 minutes less, you're screwed. Like, what?
Yeah.
How much regimen?
Yeah. Oh my God, having flashbacks. Yeah. It's interesting because I think with your previous question, it's a great segue, because moving in 2006 to a new rink, a new, you know, coaching team, coming out of high school, starting sort of this new regimen, watching the 2006 Winter Olympics, everything sort of all happened at once, going from being figure skaters, if that makes sense, to being like elite athletes. And that's not saying that like all figure skaters aren't elite athletes, because, you know, it is the case, and yet we really took it up to a totally different sort of echelon in 2006. And it was like the wake up at 6, you know, eat your almond butter toast, and, you know, come to the rink, skate for 4.5, 5 hours after warming up, take a little break, eat a little bit, go to the gym for an hour and a half, take a little break, do a little bit of ballet, go home. In the early years, we were still taking classes on campus, and so, you know, we would go to class for probably like 3 hours a day, go home, do schoolwork. I was in a sorority, so sometimes I was doing that. And man, the things you can do when you're 19 years old, it's pretty crazy. But yeah, I mean, I guess to answer your second question, because I know I'm kind of merging the two, we had such an epic team around us, and I think despite the fact that we've grown in our level of appreciation becoming adults, I think we were always really appreciative of the opportunity, knowing that not everyone had the opportunities that we had. And so if we were on the ice, you know, until we were getting to a place where we were making money skating, our parents were paying for our skating lessons. And that's not the case for everyone. A lot of people are training part of the day, they're coaching the second half of the day late into the night so that they can afford to pay for their lessons the next day, and then maybe they're like waiting tables at night, you know, because they have to, they haven't really, they can't, you know, pay all their bills. And it's like, wow, when we see stuff like that, we realized how incredibly fortunate we were. And so the combination of just that perspective and enjoying it and getting a lot of pleasure out of the work and the progress is just, we never really looked back. And I think one of the questions we get most often, especially from young skaters, it's very typical to, for a young skater to say, you know, I'm feeling a little bit discouraged. Did you ever want to quit? Like, how did you deal with that? And I don't want to put words in your mouth because maybe you feel differently, but I can honestly say there was never a day until after we won the Olympics that like I considered quitting or stopping. There was a day, you know, where I was like, oh, I wish I could snooze 3 more times, or like I wish we were starting at 8:30 instead of 6:30 or whatever it was. But we were just so lucky to find something we loved so much at such a young age, that there really was just never a day that I thought I can't do this anymore.
I'm curious, so at Google we spend a lot of time working in teams. I don't know if you have anything to add, Charlie.
I'm sure I'll work it in later.
And you mentioned having a common goal is really big. And I'm curious how else your partnership and teamwork play together. If you utilize each other's strengths, is there certain ways that maybe every now and then you had a dispute that you would resolve? But I imagine the intensity is quite high. And so what does that partnership look like? What have you learned? And maybe what are some of the things we can take away?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you know, I think we both have the right disposition for whatever this is. You know, we're like family / coworkers. And yeah, of course, with all of the time we spent on the ice and the pressure of trying to become the first ever Americans to win the Olympics, and you know, there's some external pressure, but of course, like, we want that. And we're different people. We come from different backgrounds, and so we had sometimes different visions of how to achieve that. And again, there's no right or easy answer. It's being mindful of the people in your life, and our parents showed us how to do that, and we recognized that we were trying to get to the same place. And it wasn't by sitting down and having meetings, which, sorry, I know you guys have to do that. We didn't really do that. We didn't sit and say, like, listen, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm planning, this is where we want to get to, this is where we are. We showed each other every single day by what we did on the ice and how we handle ourselves. And so it's like, you are what you do, right? And it's like, we want to say the right things, and we want to say the thing that other people want to hear all the time. And I'm speaking more broadly now. But it's only through action, right, that we define ourselves, in at least others' eyes. And that's what we had to learn growing up, that it didn't matter what you say, it's what you do. And through that, a trust and a respect just grows and grows. And you can get away with, you know, being kind of annoying some days, because you've built up a foundation that can't be cracked by a disagreement or an argument or you know, just a difference of opinion. Like, a difference of opinion in the face of what? 10 years of hard work and sacrifice and willingness to put the other person first. And also, we were both, you know, smart about how we presented, you know, our own challenging ideas. And that just speaks to the mindfulness, having other people at the forefront of your mind. And of course, that's also a huge challenge when you're like young and coming up. And yeah, we weren't always perfect. And yes, sometimes we disagreed and it wasn't like resolved instantly, or didn't just dissolve into like hard work and then, you know, Rocky music plays and we just get back to, you know, like, it was hard sometimes. It was really hard. and that's okay. And I think, you know, one of the things that we're learning now is like that was the point.
Mm-hmm.
That relationship, those lessons, having to be mindful of another person in a close relationship, that's bigger than the gold medal, which is like, it's weird because I almost feel like it's sort of sacrilegious to say that, because it's like a national pride thing. It's you know, the first ever, it's the Olympics, it's everyone sees it. But at the end of the day, you walk away with a piece of metal.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not going to change fundamentally in any way who you are or the way that you see the world. It's not, your habits are not going to shift like that because you have a shiny piece of metal. And so what I'm grateful for, and what the Olympics and skating brought into my life, were the abilities to deal with ridiculous, crazy, stressful situations, to learn how to manage myself in a close relationship. That's what makes it sort of worth it. You know, and we've sort of hinted at some of the difficulties along the way. Overall, we were crazy, crazy lucky, and so it's like there's like some weird guilt that's associated with like how lucky we were. Because you're standing on the podium and you look to the left and right and you're like, these people work just as hard as I did. I mean, maybe not quite as hard, but close. And yet I'm here on the top. And I think too, what's interesting is like both of us come from a background of like preaches equality, right? And so the concept of the Olympics and of medals is like, you're better than this other person.
Yeah.
And I think most people, when you're being reasonable, you talk it through and you're like, well, no, you're better at ice dancing than they are. But like the size of the thing, it diverts from what's reasonable. And I think what I appreciate is that we have a grounding in like reality where you can respect your competitors and yourself through competition and learn about yourself without walking away thinking that you're owed something because you also have a piece of metal. And I'm going to stop referring it to a piece of metal now because it is special. It is special in my heart. We had to work really hard to earn that. But like now we're people, you know, and what it represents is so much bigger than just some amount of time that we spent on the ice, or all of the amount of time that we spent on the ice. But it's given us a good platform to be like, to live. That was the end of the sentence.
I'm gonna hand you this bottle of water.
So speaking about Sochi, you're getting ready. What does the choreograph, the design, the costumes, what does that look like? How do you go about deciding? Charlie, you recommending AC/DC songs, and your coach has something else in mind.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Again, kind of flashback. So complicated. Like the music that you pick, it just feels like it's the end of the world if you pick the wrong music. And I think that's one of the interesting things about stepping outside of the world of sport, because I think it's hard to find two bigger fans of like the world of sport and what it can do for the world and people and the lessons it can teach you. But of course, as a former competitive athlete, where like the things that you eat, as we said, and the, you know, what time you go to bed and the quality of your pillow and like everything, just everything matters so much. And then as Charlie said, becoming just like a person and being like, it matters a little bit less today than it did yesterday. You know, and you're like the music, for example, like the amount of time we like stressed over, do we pick this song or do we pick that song? Or like, and it did pay off and it was hugely important. And yet now, like years later, looking back on it, it's like, wow, but another great lesson, we put our heads down and we focused on every last detail. And that's what it takes to be successful, right? Like in anything you do, you have to be that super hyper crazy focused on, you know, the goal or the task at hand in order to be successful at it. And having stepped away from it, I think we have more appreciation of like just how focused we were and the lives that we lived. And even though it's like sacrifice, right? Like we were going to bed early and we weren't going to parties and we weren't doing these things. And it could sort of fall under sacrifice, but it never felt like a sacrifice to us. We loved it. And I think that's something that's really great for us to understand moving forward in our lives, and whatever our future careers hold or whatever our next goals or aspirations might be. I think it's really important for us to remember, you know, the hours we spent with our dressmaker. Like, is it purple or is it lavender? I don't know. Like, let's explore these options. Or, you know, do we really need this 10 seconds of the song? And can we change it? And can we have a composer compose something that's slightly different so it sounds slightly better? Like, it was a lot. And I'm sure a lot of you guys can relate with what you do. Like, the level of detail has to be, you'll look back and be like, that was crazy. But it leads to great things and success.
So thinking about that focus, so we talked about earlier while we were having lunch, just like transitioning from being hyper-focused, sole goal, ice skating, to life after that competition. How do you bring that focus to current life? Like, are you stressing over how long the curtain should be in the house, if it's lavender or not? What does that look like? Is there something in your life now that has a similar focus that you do, or have you found different ways to go about being human?
That's a great question. I think for me, my focus has been on sort of like what I was talking about in my last rambling answer, which is like, what does it all mean, man? You know, like, which I find endlessly fascinating and also incredibly concerning when I look at the way things are done, generally speaking, in like most areas of life. And I think it's one of those things where it's like you have to experience what we experience to just to have whatever mindset I have. And in some ways it's helpful because the focus that you're talking about, you can let it dissipate to a degree, but it's such a habit, you've trained it. It's always kind of in the back of your mind. And anytime you turn your focus to something, it has a tendency to go. And so I'm lucky that for me, that's been my wife and my son. And I think that was something that I really had to prioritize, because I want to say 95% of Olympic athletes have to be like incredibly selfish. It's part of the game. There are varying degrees, and I like to think that we were as reasonable as you could be, but like you have to make it about yourself, about getting to sleep, about the meal, when, why, not going to functions because you have to train early the next morning and stuff like that. And so sort of taking a step back and looking at our impact on our families and our friends, and we're kind of like taking all of their energy, not sending a whole lot back. And so I think for both of us, and this I am going to just put words in your mouth because I know it's true. I think that being able to focus on the relationships in our lives, and being able to enjoy, like focus on enjoying, like what does enjoyment mean? What does it look like for us? And what's scary, I think, sometimes is that like we don't have a quick answer for that in a lot of different areas. But I don't think a lot of people do. And it's like we're forced to ask these questions because like we were 27-year-old retirees, you know, and we're just like, what now? And so yeah, it's a lot. It was a lot of really difficult questions that we had to ask ourselves. And this is where I get back to like everything that we went through. It's like I know I'll be okay, you know, because I've been through insane things. And sometimes it's okay that the answer isn't immediate or maybe even possible to comprehend. I think our being able to work towards fulfillment And we did that in skating. We were fulfilled. We left it all out on the ice in practice and in competition, and it paid off with a gold medal. But if we had been last, we would have been fulfilled because we did everything that we could. And I think that ultimately we have to be smart about what we're leaving it all out on the ice for. And I think that so far we've been luckier than a lot of other Olympic athletes. So it's hard. It's really hard to figure out what life is. And so it's been equal parts like fun challenge and like just challenge. I don't know, you know, like not always great, but I think too one of the things that I'm grateful for is that we've had another person that's like, you're experiencing essentially the same thing I am, and though we have different lenses, it's like we're okay, you know, and to just continue to grow and still have moments even like this, or you know, we're going to Japan for a show next week where it's like we just check in and it's like, okay, yeah, we're moving sort of in the right direction, probably. You'll be the judge of that. You all are gonna hold up checks or crosses, you know, at the end, just like these people that no, you're. But no, I think yeah, to not answer any of your questions. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, so you have found some other passions in life post. You're still ice dancing. You've been doing some volunteer work. What are some of those other passions? I think you've been doing some commentary now. Talk a little bit about those.
Sure. Well, luckily we have a lot of other passions. It's difficult to channel it into a career, and so I think, you know, in taking fulfillment and happiness and setting goals into account, I think that's one of the biggest challenges as an athlete moving into sort of like a different phase of life. It's not hard to be happy and find joy in like our families and volunteering and working with these incredible programs and passing on our experiences and knowledge and the lessons we've learned in sport. We work with a number of programs that do wonderful things, using sport as a tool to teach young people these lessons, like set a goal. It's not always going to be easy. You're going to fail probably many times. That's okay. It might be the like 1,001st time that it goes well, and that's totally okay. And getting to express those really impactful, meaningful things, especially to young people, is something we both really enjoy. And yet, I think from a career perspective, because as I'm sure you've all gathered, you know, all of the challenges were very feasible to us because we loved what we did, and we never felt as though all of the work was, sure, it was hard, but it was never a sacrifice we weren't willing to make. And I think we recognize through our challenges and success, and especially because, as Charlie said, we were not the most talented people. You can make anything happen if you're passionate enough and willing to put in the work that it takes to get there, right? And so I think as an athlete, moving away from a sport we knew we loved when we were 5, I think the biggest challenge is finding that thing that you're so passionate about that you know you're willing to do whatever it takes to make your dreams a reality or to make your goals happen. Yeah, I mean, just finding fulfillment in different ways. I mean, Charlie's a dad, and I'm sure he'll talk more about that, but spending more time with our families is a huge part of that. And you know, not being able to make aunt's birthday parties or, you know, a friend's sleepover when we were younger, or whatever it is, was just a part of our lives. And now getting to say, you know what, no, I can come for that weekend is, we take a lot of joy and pleasure in that now.
Awesome. Speaking about fatherhood, you talked about how you have that mental in your mind, you have that thought process. How do you think about trying to teach that to your son? And do you want him to have that experience somehow? And how do you, I know he's still young, but have you thought about how you want him to develop that similar type of habit, thought process experience?
Yeah. I think it's sort of, it's baked into how I think about everything now, is like, how, okay, this is an interesting thing that I like to think about, but how am I going to help contextualize this subject for my son and have him be able to interpret it and use it and healthily. And part of it is like I constantly have to, remind myself, though we share a first name, like, I don't want him to be me. Like, I want him to be better than me. That's the most important thing. And so I have to be like smarter than what I have been so far to help prepare him for that. And it, him being better than me has nothing to do, obviously, with he's not probably gonna, I'm actually crossing my fingers he doesn't want to figure skate. Like, I know too much. I'm hoping like chess club, honestly. I'm really not, I'm like laughing, but I'm not joking. No, but I think, again, just like we talk about like the lessons we learned, and a lot of people go through things and just don't like, they don't want to look back at it for better or worse. And I get that, but it's sort of like how it's cliche, but it's like you only lose if you just like leave it behind you. If you can take a lesson away from it, like how can you consider that losing? And the only reason that we became who we became was by, messing up a lot. And I try not to mess up a lot with my son. But like I do, of course. And so part of it is like how I show that it's okay for me to mess up to him. That it's like I don't have to be some paragon of perfection that I think that I could see being a trap for myself. And I think maybe for a lot of parents, it's just like you want to just be perfect all the time. And I've experienced the downside of that in competitive skating, and it didn't work out. You try to be perfect, and you'll definitely make more mistakes, and you'll be blinded to it because you have to like, when you think of yourself as perfect, you have to have like a weird pride thing that comes along with it. I don't know, man. Fatherhood is it's equally the hardest and best thing so far that I've experienced. And I'm not pushing children on anyone, like it's totally whatever you think is reasonable. But I will say, it's awesome. It's awesome. And again, it's just like I do think like how grateful I am to have had the experiences that I've had, traveled, seen different people, and the effects of, especially in a tough sport, the effects of poor parenting on incredible, talented young people who aren't able to achieve their dreams because they weren't given the psychological foundation that they needed, and like how incredibly depressing that is to see, and for me to look at my son and be like, how could anyone sort of just take this relationship for granted? It blows my mind. And so that's something I'm really aware of too, is just like, and helping, finding a way to, I guess, to propagate that in him, that same sort of, just, again, I think it's just mindfulness, just having an awareness of like others and the difficulties inherent in society, I don't know, again, it's like there's nothing easy, and I think maybe the problem is that we're having this conversation like 5 years too early. I would love to just come down and just say like, this is it, guys. Like I know, but I also will admit that it's kind of the fun part, and re-experiencing the world with him has been really interesting.
Great. One final question. So take yourselves back to Sochi. You're in the lead, you just completed your long form, it was flawless. At that moment, did you know you won the gold? What were you feeling? Or is it all just a big blur?
Yeah, so Charlie and I think, had been completely undefeated in 2 years.
Tell them how nervous we were first.
Okay, well, we were terrified. I remember, well, I think it's important to contextualize first, right? Let's contextualize. So Charlie and I, how much time do we have? You guys have lots of work to do, I'm sure. We got second in Vancouver in 2010. That was our first Olympic Games. Like the best experience in every way. We were terrified, but other than just representing our country and our families well, like there wasn't a lot on the line. We didn't feel a lot of pressure to be anything other than, what we were. And once you get an Olympic silver medal, there are two ways to go, up or down. And it's really, really hard to go up, right? And so leaving Vancouver, we very briefly, for the first time, we're like, okay, well, are we gonna keep going? We have this Olympic silver medal. That's awesome. Like, we could leave now and go be real people and like have this Olympic silver medal. That would be great. And we were like, no. We have to keep going. We have to do this. And we put our heads down. And I don't think they came up until like 6 months after the 2014 Olympics. Like, we were so insanely focused every single day for those years. I think we lost 2 competitions over the course of the 4 years. We were undefeated for the 2 years leading into the 2014 Olympics. And I think it was probably like October of 2013. So like we were already ramping up for the games, but it was a ways away. And I just remember thinking, if I am this nervous now, I do not know how we're gonna be able to do this, because there was so much on the line. We were in a great place. We had done everything imaginable, like to put ourselves in the best position possible to perform at our very best. And not just us, but our families, right? Like, our families were supporting us and there for us and talking us through the difficulties, and our coaches were doing these things, and our friends would call us and be like, how are you doing? You feeling good? You getting enough sleep? Like, we had just the most epic community of people around us supporting us constantly. And so we were terrified. And before we went to Sochi, Charlie and I were both sort of feeling, and I think we shared at some point, we were both feeling like, if we run away, can anyone find us? Like, if we just avoid this whole situation and run into the woods, like somewhere in Russia, maybe we'll never be found and we'll never actually have to like live this moment where it all comes down to this.
There was an exit. Sorry.
Yeah.
There was like an exit sign, and I was thinking like we were waiting backstage for our names to be called to go compete. Thanks for holding the mic. And I just remember thinking, like, really thinking it was reasonable for me to just like walk out and to just, and that like ultimately, it'd be okay, but like I just was like, I cannot handle this pressure. Yeah.
And figure skating, if you make any mistake, especially ice dance, it is over. Like, if someone's bobby pin followed the skater before you, if their hairpin falls on the ice and you step on it and you slip and fall, which is a very real thing that happens, like, your 20 years of preparation is over, right? Like, it's crazy. And and especially because we had so much momentum and it was going so well, we're like, what if, and I don't think we had made a mistake. Like, we very rarely made mistakes because we prioritized our training, and we had to be that way because, like we said, we weren't the most talented, and so our consistency and our preparation had to be what we relied on. And so we're like, well, what if it's now? Like, what if now is the time where we make a mistake? And anyway, so to answer your question, we could talk about this for hours, and maybe there was like a former psychologist in the room or something who could, add some color commentary to this. But I ultimately, let's look at it from the other side for a second. We were so incredibly prepared. I think over the years, over like the insane amount of mistakes, we learned probably the most important thing was nothing can replace hard work and preparation. And by the time Charlie and I showed up for Sochi, we literally could have closed our eyes. Like, it just was so in our bodies and our minds and our everything that I don't want to say there's no way it could have gone wrong, because as I've explained, there are many ways it could have gone wrong. But every single day in practice, we performed like we were competing at the Olympic Games. And that was the only way we were able to deal with the pressure, both internally and, externally. We had a lot of sponsors, which was amazing. And just these people were depending on us, and we thought, we are so ready for this. We have done, for the last, realistically, 20 years, everything that we need to do to get to the point where we can perform the way we need to perform. And to answer your question, as we're horrible at, apparently, when we finished our final performance in Sochi, even though obviously winning the Olympics is great, and we are so glad we did, it's like we recognize that we had done everything. We could not have done anything differently. We couldn't have been better than we were. And we couldn't have been better than we were. And just sheer happiness and relief that the part that we could control, we took responsibility for it, not just there, not just like 6 months before the games, not just like a year before the games, but like we took that responsibility and we took it very seriously. And I think standing there on the ice, we were just so proud of that, you know, the way that we approached it and the way we approached it together as a team. That just meant so much. And the medal's awesome, but like standing there and just being proud of everything we did to get there was definitely the best part.
Awesome.
Hey. First of all, thank you both for coming. This was an awesome talk, and you're both so lively and hilarious. So that's definitely refreshing, and it's nice. So you talked a lot about the difference in how you internally changed from before the Olympics to after and what that transition looked like. What would you say was the biggest difference from an external factor, like how other people interacted with you, how your lives changed from, like, I'm sure your phone started blowing up immediately after. What did that process look like from like before and after?
It's a great question, and I think it sort of speaks to our mindset that we didn't touch on that. I think our experience with notoriety, fame of a sort, has been very interesting and revealing in a lot of ways about the nature of that topic. We surrounded ourselves with really good people, and we benefited from that as our brand recognition grew, shall I say. Brand recognition.
We're familiar with that term.
Yeah. Which is great when you're Google, but when you're human, it can be a little weird, you know, and especially, and it's something that we still deal with, just the concept and like, what is it? But it was both challenging and of course also fun, because like you had people telling you that you're awesome, and that, for whatever our, you know, the lizard part of our brain is like, good. That's a good thing to have people tell you that you're awesome. But at the same time, I think that we managed dealing with that well. We didn't internalize it too much, but enjoyed the success that we had. You know, we went on Dancing with the Stars, and yeah, Meryl won. You should clap. She makes me say that. But it was fun because it was so different. Like, we grew up. I mean, we traveled, but we're from Detroit, right? Like, so it wasn't something that we hadn't really thought about. And ice dancing hadn't really brought fame into people's lives very much. And so, yeah, I don't know. Maybe that was a bad answer. You answer.
No, I mean, pros and cons to everything. And I think it was definitely a strange experience to experience like the notoriety following the games. But I think for us, we really held on to these like really earnest moments that we had with people where like what we did, and you know, we're under no pretenses, like we don't think that we're like curing cancer or we're figure skaters. Like, great, we can relay these lessons, but it's figure skating, right? And it has its great qualities. But over the years, and people continue to come up to us and say, you know, I always loved watching figure skating with my mom or my grandmother, and oftentimes, unfortunately, many of those people have since passed away, and every time I watch you skate, or every time I watch skating, you know, I'm reminded of this beautiful time I had with my mom, sharing in this beautiful experience, watching a sport that we both love. And so I think it's, you know, those experiences of knowing that you had the opportunity to, in some way, positively impact someone else's life. And, you know, we're not curing diseases, like I said, but just having like a second of people's lives and being able to make it a little bit brighter, or like creating a memory, is such a huge honor, you know? And now, like, the kids who are watching us in 2014 when they were, you know, whatever they were, 8 years old, or, you know, we see them in their teenagers, or math isn't my strong suit, but and saying, oh, we loved watching you, when I was a kid growing up, and it inspired me to ... And like, wow, like not everyone has that opportunity to inspire other people or make them feel a certain way or create beautiful memories. And it's not fame, and again, we're not like major celebrities by any means, but like it has its drawbacks for sure, and especially as it's sort of like being thrust upon you all at once. But I think more than anything, it's given us the opportunity to do good things, and draw attention to good things and create even very, very small, beautiful moments in people's lives. So I think for us, that's really what stands out with that part of our lives.
And I
Great
think
question.
that is a marvelous way for us to wrap up today. So creating memories, impacting, thank you.
Thank you, guys.